be talking to you today, and I wanted to start off with a story. So I'm going to take us back in time. We're going back 10 years, almost to the day, and it's November of 2010. And I've boarded a flight, return flight to London. And shortly after the cabin doors close, I could tell something's not right. And as the plane begins to ascend, pressure begins developing in my chest, and soon that pressure becomes pain, which goes through my left shoulder and down my left arm. I start to feel quite nauseous and start sweating quite a lot. And I say to my friend and colleague sat next to me, Lewis, can you please go get some help? Something's not right. Lewis jumps over, runs to the attention of a stewardess who asks if there's a doctor on board. And luckily for me, there was one. Doctor comes rushing over, takes my vital signs and says, we need to land the plane immediately. I think he's having a heart attack. Now, when you hear these words, 35,000 feet up in the air, trust me, you feel about as far away from help as you could possibly imagine. I mean, I don't know what would be further away. I'd have to be an astronaut, I guess. And as that plane was descending, it felt like an absolute eternity. I was worried that my heart would stop just before reaching safety. And I kept thinking to myself, please fly faster, let's touch down. And when we finally did land in a small town in France, we were flying over France at the time, they had shut down the runway, an ambulance was waiting with the lights flashing, and an emergency response team boarded the plane, took me into the waiting ambulance where they administered nitrates to open up my arteries and increase the blood flow to the heart. And as the ambulance sped off to the local hospital, I looked up into the eyes of the French paramedic looking down at me and said, please don't let me die. I have a 5-year-old son. Because in a moment like that, when you think it's lights out, game over, that's all she wrote. Whatever your truth is, whatever's most important to you reveals itself. Your soul speaks, your heart speaks, and what my heart said really unnerved me. Think about it this way. If you were given 5 more minutes to live and you thought you were on your deathbed, it's not like any one of you would say, oh, thank God, can you please pass me my laptop real quick so I can fire off a few more emails? In a moment like that, what truly matters comes out. And the next morning when I woke up in that hospital, I realized that something needed to change. I realized that all of my success prior to that point was coming at the price of my health and relationship. You see, I had been obsessed with achievement for 10 years prior to that incident, working 100-plus hour work weeks at McKinsey & Company, helping build Skype before we sold it to eBay for $4 billion. And building several of my own businesses. But after that point, I realized that something needed to change. I had to find a way to continue performing at a peak level, but without breaking down. So I decided to go all in and become an expert in the field of peak performance. I completed a coaching certification and apprenticeship with Professor B.J. Fogg. He runs Stanford University's Behavior Design Lab. So I could really understand from a peak performance point of view, what is it that we need to change behaviorally to be operating at our best? What are the key habits that we need to be constructing? And how do we construct those habits? And how do we similarly deconstruct bad habits? And I also completed a coaching certification with the High Performance Institute in the United States. And one of the startling discoveries that I made was that behind the performance of every top performer stood a coach. And so I decided to hire a coach myself, and I got into the best shape of my life. I became a lot more present and available, both as a husband and father. And last year in the UK, I was recognized as the CEO of the year. And I put all of this down to that decision to really understand what is it that drives peak performance? How do we create that without sacrificing our health and relationships? And also, I put that down to the power of having a coach there to help keep me accountable and help guide me in my actions and in my choices. I believe everyone can reach their full potential. Everyone can become extraordinary, and that it's never too late to start, and that we can do it without the unhealthy hustle. And today, I want to teach you 3 things, 3 ways in which I've upped my game and became a peak performer in both my business and life. And the 3 things all center around the acronym IPA. Like the beer, but better for you. So today I'm going to be talking about the power of identity, how you can step into being your best by deciding who is it that you really want to be. What does that person look like? How does that person behave and show up in the world? We're going to be talking about the power of productivity, How can you optimize yourself for action so that you can actually be getting more done with less time? And we're going to talk about the power of anti-fragility. How can you get better at handling the unexpected and stay true to the course and complete whatever goals are, whatever goals you have that you're working on. So IPA, identity, productivity, and anti-fragility. That is the theme of today's talk. So let's go ahead and get started with identity. And the reason we're starting here with identity is because you can't become a better person by continuing to be the person you've always been in the past. If you want to make a change, then we need to change, and we need to start with your identity. In my new book, The 3 Alarms, I talk about 3 simple phone alarms that I use to bring more intentionality into my day. These 3 alarms are used to segment my day, and each of the segments of my day is powered by a best self identity that I cue with these phone alarms. So let me give you an example. At 6:30 a.m., the first alarm on my phone goes off, and it says World Fitness Champion. Now, I'm not a World Fitness Champion, and I never will be, but it's to cue that identity, because that's the version of me that will go into the gym in the morning. That's who's walking through the doors. And that's the version of me that's sitting there in the exercises in the moment and completing the workout. So for example, if I get up to that 8th repetition and I think, I'm not going to make it to 10, then that identity kicks off in my head. World Fitness Champion. Would a World Fitness Champion complete the set? Of course he would. And so I complete that 9th rep, that 10th rep, and 11th and 12th for good measure. Why? Because champions do more. At 9 a.m., the next alarm goes off for me. And when I say alarm going off together with these phrases, what I mean is that if you go and set an alarm on your phone, as you would a wake-up alarm for the next day, what you'll notice is that there's a field that says name or label. And you can actually click on that and give your alarm a name. You can call it whatever you like, so that that phrase appears on your phone when the alarm goes off. So at 9 a.m., the next one goes off for me. It says World's Best Coach, to remind me, how is that version of me starting the day? How decisive, inspiring, reliable will I be for my clients? And the third alarm, the game-changing alarm for me, goes off at 6:30 p.m. and it says World's Best Husband and Father, to prompt the question, how would the world's best husband and father walk through that door right now? You see, prior to that point, I might have gotten home or finished my work day and the kids would want to play and I might want to put it off. My wife might want to talk about something or need some help with something, and I might suggest, why don't we do that on the weekend? But is that how the world's best father responds? Is that how the world's best husband responds? Of course not. And by continually reminding myself across these 3 key dimensions, my health, my wealth, or my work as a wealth driver, my health, my wealth, and my relationships, by continually reminding myself what best looks like for me across those 3 dimensions, giving it a name, a best self-identity, a name that means something for me to both shoot for and measure myself against, and then timing that identity to go off at the most relevant segment of my day, it's brought in so much clarity and so much more intentionality and frankly, just better results in my life. So I encourage you, when it comes to your identity, to do concretely a few things. One is define, what does your best self look like in each of these three dimensions? Your health, your wealth, and your relationships, or your health, your work, and on the home front. Give that identity a name. It could be a phrase, as I've done. It could be the name of an individual. And time that identity to go off, time that phone alarm to go off at the time of day that would be most relevant or would most benefit from the power of that intentionality, from the power of you cueing yourself with that best self identity. When we bring intentionality into our days, when we bring intentionality into these key areas, it shapes our behavior. Think about it when you were a child, and or if you have kids. If you put a Spider-Man costume on one of your children, what happens? They start behaving like Spider-Man, and that's the power of identity-driven change. Start with who you want to be first, and then that will inspire the behaviors that bring that identity to life. Now, there's a lot more, of course, to talk about with regards to identity, but I just wanted to give you this simple approach with these 3 alarms across these 3 areas. And I want to move now into the next topic, which is productivity. And the reason we're talking about productivity is because we can't become all that we're capable of becoming unless we're doing the right things and we're optimizing ourselves for action. And there's a million different things that we can talk about when it comes to productivity. But today I just want to share with you 3 of the most powerful things that I've found to generate with results with both myself and my clients so that you can also bring a lot more productivity into your day. And I want to start off by getting us to think about productivity as a design issue. This is something that we want to design into our days rather than this stick that we're whipping ourselves with. So we're going to talk about productivity design by focusing on the power of routines. I want you to install 3 routines in your day which will power your productivity. You're going to design these routines into your day. The first is an evening routine. And the evening routine has 2 simple components. We want a shutdown ritual and a digital sunset. So a shutdown ritual is simply you deciding when would you like your day to end. And for the 30 minutes before that point, you're going to put a static appointment in your calendar that says shutdown. And when that appointment comes up, you're going to keep that appointment just as you would with someone else. And you're going to go through the same checklist every single time. You're going to review your day and update your to-do list with any actions that emerge from your day. You're going to do a final check of your email. You're going to review your calendar for tomorrow. And then super importantly, you're going to pick the top 3 things that you're going to work on the next day and then drop them into your calendar as appointments with yourself in the day. So you're going to shut down your day, effectively knowing exactly what you're going to be working on the next day and having already decided when you're going to be working on those things. Now, the second thing is a digital sunset. To work super productively, we need to make sure that we're getting enough sleep. Notice how I'm starting with an evening routine here, by the way, rather than starting with the morning routine. And that's because a productive day doesn't begin the day of, it actually begins the evening before. That's why we're starting with the evening routine first. We set ourselves up for a productive day by focusing on creating that productivity the day before. So we have our shutdown ritual, now a digital sunset. Digital sunset is simply you deciding that in the last hour before you go to bed, such that you can get 8 hours of sleep, you're going to shut off all the electronics. And what I mean is your TV, the iPad, telephone, laptop, all of those electronic devices, the light coming from those devices, when it goes into your eyes in the last hour before bedtime, it can lower your melatonin production by 50%. What is melatonin? It's the sleep-inducing hormone that your body creates. And without enough melatonin, you won't sleep a full 8 hours. And even if you do, you won't sleep as restfully as you could. Why is this important for productivity? Because studies clearly show that if we're not well rested, we're going to be more prone to distraction, procrastination, and just not be as productive as we could. So that's the evening routine, shutdown ritual, digital sunset to really maximize your sleep. And then we follow up with a morning routine. So how you should start your morning, I highly recommend you start your morning with some exercise first. Exercise creates a 12-hour mood boost that has been shown to be equivalent in strength to an antidepressant. So if you're taking an antidepressant, do you want to take it right before bed or do you want to take it in the morning so you can benefit from it for the entire day? So I highly recommend you exercise as your starting activity in the morning whenever you can, and it will really power both your mood and your energy, both of which have been shown to be super important for maximizing your productivity. Now, the other thing that I recommend that you do in the morning is to start your day creatively rather than reactively. So what I mean by that is instead of starting in your inbox or on social media when you actually start up your workday or browsing the news, instead work on one of those top 3 things that you decided the day before. Start there first, because if you get a good creative surge, good creative output to the start of your day, it automatically just sets your day up for feeling and being more productive. So we got our evening routine, we got our morning routine, and then last but not least, we need our work day routine. So how is it that we're going to work throughout the day? And there's two things here once again. One is I'd like you to focus on single tasking, and then two, take lots of frequent breaks throughout the day. So single tasking, what do I mean by this? Well, the average person, according to the book, The One Thing, the average person loses 28% of their workday by jumping around from task to task and not sticking with one thing for long enough. And all of that creates a lot of ineffectiveness in our approach to work. We might start working on a presentation, and then 13 minutes later, we take a phone call, and then suddenly we're doing a little bit of Google research, and suddenly we're in our inbox, and suddenly we're checking the LinkedIn feed, and then suddenly we're back to the presentation. And then suddenly the hour has passed 60 minutes, and we realize that we've only worked 17 minutes in the presentation, and now we're off to the next thing. So that 28% loss in a day, that is catastrophic when we extrapolate it across a year, let alone even more time. So for example, if we take 52 work weeks, subtract 6 for holiday or vacation, we got 46 weeks left. And if we take a 28% loss on those 46 weeks, the average person is losing 13 weeks a year, an entire calendar quarter, by jumping around from one thing to the next and not sticking with things in a single tasking fashion long enough for, say, 30 minutes or 60 minutes at a time. So, of course, people feel stressed, not as productive as they could, because they're not staying with things long enough. They're losing an entire calendar quarter. They're playing with only 3 quarters in the year instead of 4. And extrapolated across an entire 40-year career, the average person is losing an entire decade by simply jumping around repeatedly throughout the day and not sticking with things long enough. So, master the power of single tasking. Focus on sticking with one thing at a time. Don't distract yourself. Keep your phone out of your room and just work 30 to 60 minute solid blocks. Last but not least, after you work those quality periods of time, get up, move around, take a break. Taking breaks throughout the day has been shown also to boost productivity significantly. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is anti-fragility. So we've talked about identity, we've talked about productivity, and we're going to end with anti-fragility. So anti-fragility is simply getting better at handling the unexpected, but even more importantly, realizing that stress builds strength. So we appreciate this with our bodies without even knowing it. And we also appreciate it with knowing it when we go to the gym. So what I mean with the first part is that our bodies are the perfect temples for anti-fragility. So you expose the body to germs and bacteria, and it builds the immune system. Small doses of UV radiation can actually generate vitamin D in the cells in your body and repair small tissues. And we also know about anti-fragility when we go to the gym. Right? If we stress a muscle, it causes it to grow, right? So our whole concept of fragile, robust, and anti-fragile, that's a spectrum there. And most people, if they're not careful, they'll be in a fragile state. So they get hit a couple of times and they'll fall apart. A lot of people think that the opposite of fragile is, say, robust or resilient. So they can take more of a beating, but they'll still fall apart. Or perhaps resilient. Right? The definition of resilience is that if you take a hit, you stay the same. So you return back to where you were. But the true opposite of being fragile, the true power position you want to be is anti-fragile, such that the more hits you take, the stronger you become. So how do we do that? It starts with reframing stress. We have to realize that stress is not something that hurts us. If we positively view it, it's something that builds us. It's something that strengthens us. Again, we get this naturally when we step into the gym, and we need to bring that into our lives. And so what I mean is that we need to turn our day into one big mental gym. If you wanted to strengthen your bicep in the gym, you would step towards the weight rack, right? You'd pick up the weight and you'd complete the repetition. So if a weight, so to speak, is brought to you in the course of your day, something not going well, somebody cuts you off, you miss a train or a plane or whatever it may be, that's a weight being presented to you. So you could either step away from the rack and not complete the repetition and lift it and run away from it, or you could stay in there in the moment and complete that repetition, accept the challenge, and grow stronger as a result. And one of the most powerful ways you can do this is by simply mastering the art of the pause. And so what I mean by that is that when something triggers you, and you normally would just blurt out or follow through with whatever your typical response pattern would be, pause before you do that. No matter what the trigger is, if you can just master the art of pausing, between stimulus and response, you can give your prefrontal cortex, the executive decision-making function, processing center of your brain, the chance to choose an optimal response. All you have to do is pause. No matter what's triggering you throughout the day, you can develop your anti-fragility by simply pausing and then asking yourself, what is the most optimal way to respond to this? And as you practice doing that, as you practice the art of the pause and develop that optimal response pattern, it will become more and more how you respond to the challenges and stresses in your life. And you will alchemize challenge into growth. You will become anti-fragile in the process, not just physically, as we tend to all automatically get with our bodies, but also mentally. So identity, productivity, and anti-fragility. These are three keys that I believe can help us all reach our full potential and become extraordinary in life. And I'd like to end with a just quick story once again. So my cardiologist said to me at one point, Eric, you don't need to come along and see me anymore for checkups. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, because if I were to share, or if I were to refer you to another doctor and not share your history, they wouldn't be able to find any evidence or issues with your heart. And I know 100% that that's a result of having correctly implemented the myriad of peak performance principles that I've gathered over the years, and some of which I've shared with you today. Now, if you find all of this interesting and if you'd like to learn more, please head over to my website at ericpartaker.com, EricPartaker, ericpartaker.com, where you will find the opportunity to collect a free digital copy of my book, new book, The 3 Alarms, which goes into these concepts in a lot more detail. And I also have a free training program that I'm providing as well, a set of videos and worksheets that can help you more deeply embed some of the concepts that we've discussed today. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I look forward to your questions, and thank you for your time. Thanks.